Hi everybody, welcome back to the amazing Microsoft Flight Simulator, and in this video we're going to be doing a Case 1 launch and recovery from the American carrier USS Harry S. Truman in the Mediterranean just next to Gibraltar, using the F35C fighter that you can see here. Now, in order to do this, you're going to want to have the IndiaFoxtEcho F-35 from the store. I remember that's the Microsoft Flight Simulator store. I think you can buy it separately as well, but especially on Xbox you can buy it in the store. And you're going to want the LVFR'sAircraft Carrier Global, and they're the ones that dock these carriers all over the place. And also in the link in the description below this video, you'll find links to a Wikipedia page that describes how to do landing operations on an American aircraft carrier. And in particular, there is a very useful diagram which I recommend you print out, which kind of shows you the racetrack and the brake and the 180 that you do when you come into land. Now, this is quite tricky, so I thoroughly recommend that you get used to flying and landing the F-35, on normal airfields first, because this is quite tricky. Now, what you need to do as well is, in your hangar, make sure you select the F35C option. That's the carrier option, and that's the one that has the simulated catapult and tailhook as well. Because what's really clever about the F35C from IndiaFoxtEcho Echo is that it simulates carrier takeoffs and landings. So you can do this on, well, you can simulate them on normal airfields as well. You're also going to need to know some controls. Now, all of this you can do on an Xbox as long as you plug in a USB keyboard and mouse. Because what we need to be able to do is on the display, we need to be able to access using our mouse this over here. So that's our landing hook that we're going to put on as we come down to land. And we also need to be able to know about, when you press menu, you'll see when we have in fact, let's see if I bring our landing hook down and we bring the menu up. Okay, you can't see, but you'll see when we're coming down, there's an extra option that says call the ball, and what that will do is that then means we then kind of get some vocal instructions as we're coming into land. We also need to be able to have to hit the launch bar control there. Okay, so what we're going to do, and this is very important whenever you're doing this sort of thing, is you really need to have a flight plan in your head or written down on a bit of paper next to you. So generally the way that flights operate on a carrier is that once an aircraft has launched and it's gone off and it's doing its business, when it comes back to the carrier, it will go into a flight pattern like a racetrack around the top of the carrier. And when it's coming into land, it will sort of fly past the carrier. It will I think they call it the brake, where he'll put his flaps down, he'll put his landing gear down, put his hook down, and he'll come down this way, sort of in the opposite direction to the carrier, at about 600 feet. So you're 800 feet over here, 600 feet down here, and then when you get sort of behind the carrier, you then do what's called the 180. So this is where you turn around, and then as you're getting round to here where you see the back of the carrier, we're then going to call the ball. And we're also, on the F-35, we're going to hit the speed brakes as well, because we need to get our speed down to between around about 150 knots. If we go too slow, if we go down to like 120, 110, the plane will stall and fall into the sea. If we go too fast, say like 200 knots, we're going to bounce off the deck and we're not going to land. It's important to remember as well is, in this particular case, the carriers aren't moving, so normally the carrier would be zooming along at 30 knots, so we would have an extra 30 knots worth of airspeed. So that's why this isn't, it's not as in-depth as something like DCS World, but it's pretty cool and it's pretty sweaty and it's very exciting to do. Really recommend you do this on set the weather to clear as well, so you don't get clouds in the way, and be fully prepared to do a wave off. And I think if you start having trouble with lining up with the aircraft carrier, and doing stuff. Just practice doing the racetrack around the top of the aircraft carrier. So fly over it, do a 180, go past it, do a 180, and just fly over it. Now, what I find is very, very useful is making a note of the bearings. In fact, this is crucial. So we're on the carrier now, and we can see that the bearing of the landing deck, this kind of this white and yellow striped line here, we're at 65 degrees. See, if you look in the top left hand corner, it says 65 degrees. So we know that when we're coming into land, that's going to be our bearing to the carrier. So before we take off, it's good to, it's worth working out what the opposite bearing will be. So the opposite bearing for 65 degrees is about 245 degrees. So once we've taken off, we're going to try not to go above 1,000 feet. So we're going to sort of take off. We're going to pull our landing gear in. We're going to leave our flaps open though, and we're going to not go above 1,000 feet. We're going to drop back our throttle to about 65%, and then we're going to do a 180 turn to a bearing of about 245. Fly back past the carrier. When we've gone past the carrier, we're then going to put our landing hook down. We're going to put our gear down, and then we're going to do the 180 where we turn back to a 65 degree heading, and at that point we're going to coal the ball, so they're going to start guiding us in, and we're going to hit our air brake as well. Now the key binding for the air brake is divide on your number key, or /, but I think it's got to be on your numpad, and that will then bring us right down. Then what we need to do is keep an eye on our height, make sure we're not getting too low, and keep an eye on our speed. We want to make sure our speed is getting below 200 knots, and you'll see there's like this little icon that appears on our HUD that will kind of guide us into the carrier. Then as soon as we hit the deck in the carrier, as long as we don't bounce off, we'll start to slow down. Then we hit the air brake, we hit the brakes, hit the parking brake, and we'll just stop, and that will then be a successful landing. Okay, so fingers crossed. Let's see if we can do this. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of throttle, landing brakes off, and we're just going to move towards the catapult at the front. The F-35, you can actually catapult launch from anywhere on the carrier because of the fact that the catapult is kind of built into the aircraft. But this is so cool, and it's so brilliant that you can do this on Xbox as well. I'm just going to kill the throttle now, and then we're just going to roll up to this catapult. A beautiful day here in the Med, and then when we get close to it, I'm just going to hit the landing brake. So landing brake is down. So I'm just going to put my flaps to full. Now, if I'm making any mistakes when I'm doing this, I do apologise. I'm no expert. I've watched a few videos, and then what we need to do is in the cockpit we need to put our launch bar down. So if we click that, and then if you look at the front wheel on the aircraft, see that bar that's going down? So the plane's getting ready to do a catapult launch now as well. So again, to get it ready in the head, so what we're going to do, we're going to go to full throttle in a moment. As the aircraft starts to roll forward, we're going to release the parking brake. As soon as we've taken off, we're going to put our gear away. We're going to back off the throttle because we don't really want to go above 1,000 feet, and then we're going to do that 180 degree turn to a heading of 245. So let's go to full throttle. She starts to creep forward, release the parking brake, off we go, wheels are in, altitude 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet, nosing down a little bit, 500 feet, 600 feet. If we put the little round bit between those, we'll start to level off. So we're put 700 feet now. We'll go a little bit higher. Just going to back off the throttle. So I'm just backing off the throttle. Take us down to about 65%. Okay, so we're coming up to 1,000 feet now. Now on the F-35 display, on the right hand side, it gives you your height in feet. On the left hand side, it gives us our speed in knots. So we're going pretty fast. We're doing 416 knots at the moment, which is obviously way too fast for landing. We're going to bleed a lot of that off when we put our landing gear down and our hook, and that's why we're going to be hitting the speed brakes as well. As you can see, we've still got our flaps up at full. The carrier will be well behind us by now. So let's do that 180 turn to a heading of 245. So again, at the top of the HUD, you should just be able to see it says 70 at the moment. So we're going to crank her over, and we're going to try and... We want to lose a little bit of height. We want to get down to about 800 feet, but if we keep that little round reticle sort of near the lines. We won't lose too much size. So we're trying to get 245 again. We're just keeping an eye on the angle. You can just about see it. So we're going to get around to 245. Just pulling back on the stick a little bit. 900 feet. There we go. Coming round. 300 degrees. There's Gibraltar coming up. Going a little bit higher, a little bit rudder, just take us down. 250, 248, 245. There we go. So here we go. So that was quite a relaxed turn. We're at 1,000 feet right now. We can see the carrier. There she is. Over there. Now this is all about patience, this sort of thing. You can't rush it. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to put our wheels down, and this is going to create loads of drag. So we're going to really start slowing down now, and then in the cockpit we're just going to click on our hook, which is over here, and just check that that's coming down there. So we're up 700 feet, so we're dropping a little bit too fast. 720 feet. This we kind of do. We'll kind of stay at this sort of height as we approach the carrier. Now, because our turn was quite a lazy turn, we didn't turn that sharp. When we swing back around to the carrier, we're not going to be doing a full 180, even though it's called the 180. But we do know, because we know that the angle of the flight deck, the landing deck, is 65 degrees. We just need to hit that 65 degrees. So we're zooming along at about 800 feet now, 250 knots. So you see we're really going pretty fast. We're going way too fast for to land. So I'm just going to bleed off some more power off the engine, go down to 60%. I couldn't really find any information about what sort of engine power you should have. They often refer to, there's the carrier, they refer to having the engines at idle. And the idea really for a carrier landing is that you set your angle of attack, so the angle of the aircraft, and you're sort of so that's set as you're coming down, and you can control up and down with your throttle as you're going up and down that way. Now I'm doing this on a joypad, so it's not that easy to do it. Okay, so let's see where the carrier is. So the carrier is pretty much there. So we're going to start doing our turn now. So we just need to remember what's in our head. We need to come around to an angle of 65. We need to call the ball, and we need to hit our air brake, because again we're going 237 knots, which is way too fast. We'll just bounce off the deck if we do that. Altitude is 800. We want to get down, if we can, to around about sort of 600 feet at the end of the 180. So remember our angle is 65, so let's tip her over. Let's pull back on the stick. We don't want to lose too much height. We've got to be careful we don't crash into the sea. So swinging around. $130 degrees, 100 degrees, 90 degrees, 80 degrees, 70 degrees. Here's the carrier, 60 degrees. Right, here she is. So now we hit menu, call the ball, hit our speed brake, and we start. See that little icon that's appeared in the middle of the screen now? So we're doing 190 knots, so we're going too fast. So let's back off the engine a bit more. Let's take it down to 50%. But we need to keep an eye out. We don't want to go down too fast. We're just keeping that on the back of the carrier. It's the angle of the flight deck, the landing deck, is really, really steep. So 300 feet. Nose up a little bit. Here we go. Let's take it down a little bit. Speed 150 knots. So we're bang on for speed. There's the back. Where's the yellow line? Very difficult to see the yellow line, but we're kind of lined up now. There's the carrier. Here we go. We're going to hit. We're a little bit off angle, but let's take it down. And we parking brake on. Oh! There we go. We just about made it. Right, let's go into the cockpit. Let's hit fold. The wings are going to fold up. I like doing that at the end. So see the yellow and white line? That's what I should have landed up. Well, it wasn't quite lined up quite right on that landing. One of the really tricky things is actually it's very difficult to see that as you're coming along. But as you can see, with a bit of practice, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun. It's well worth the price of admission for buying the F-35, IndiaFoxtEcho F-35, and buying the LVFR Aircraft Carriers Global. But as I say, the F-35 will work with any of the carrier packs because the Catapult and Arrestor system is part of the F-35C and not actually part of the aircraft carrier. Okay, well, they say that a good landing is one you could walk away from, and we just about walked away from that one, didn't we, without falling off the edge of the carrier. Hopefully you found these useful. If you have, if you want to see more of the same, press subscribe, and I will of course see you again soon.